Hello, my name is Adrian Fielding. I'm going to be giving a few lectures here on game design fundamentals. A bit about myself first. I worked in the games industry after graduating from Limerick Institute of Technology. I worked on several mobile games as a programmer, a character rigger, an animator, a technical artist, and the last big project I worked on was a virtual reality application for Stonebridge Colleges. I'm currently a lecturer at LIT on the Game Art and Design course. So I'm going to start this at the beginning, looking at what is a game, trying to define what a game is. There's quite a few different definitions of this, from the very convoluted and then the more simple ones. Probably the first person to define what a game is was Johann Huizinga in his book Homo Ludens in 1938. He defined a game as a voluntary activity or occupation executed within certain fixed limits of time and place, according to rules freely accepted but absolutely binding, having its aim in itself and accompanied by a feeling of tension, joy, and the consciousness that is different from ordinary life, which is very convoluted and quite complicated. So the aim of this lecture is we're going to break these down a bit, and so we can define exactly what a game is. More recently, there's been a lot of research into games, particularly game design on the digital side. One of the definitions there comes from a study of games by Elliot Avedon and Brian Sutton Smith. Games are an exercise of voluntary control systems in which there is a contest between powers confined by rules in order to produce a disequilibrial outcome. Again, still a bit convoluted, so we're going to look for simpler ones again. A game is a system in which players engage in an artificial conflict defined by rules that result in a quantifiable outcome from rules of play. So we're getting a bit simpler now. A game is a form of art in which participants turn players make decisions in order to manage resources through game tokens in the pursuit of a goal. Jane McGonigal in Reality is Broken, Why Games Make Us Better and How They Can Change the World, which is a very good book and possibly quite relevant to this course. Simplified it further. When you strip away the genre differences and the technological complexities, all games share four defining traits: goals, rules, a feedback system, and voluntary participation. And then Kevin J. Maroney simplifies it even further. A game is a form of play with goals and structure. And Scott Rogers in the book Level Up defines it as: a game is an activity that requires at least one player, has rules, and a win-loss condition. So, taking something out of each one of those and simplifying it down to a few basic definitions there. Games are willfully entered. Games have goals. Games have conflict. Games have rules. They can be won and lost. They're interactive. They have challenge. They engage players. And they can create their own internal value. So I'll just go through each of these in a little more depth there. Games are entered willfully. People want to play games. People are drawn to playing games. If you look at any single town has a video game store. The video game market there is worth, in 2015, was worth 91 billion. I think that's up to about 99 billion last year. People pay a lot of money to play games. They have goals. A simple game like Monopoly, the goal of Monopoly is to bankrupt the other players. All games have a goal. Even if you look at an example like a kid playing keepy uppies with a soccer ball, he will give himself a goal. His goal will be, I want to beat my record for this. So, yeah, all games have goals. Games have conflict. That can be as simple as, do I go left, do I go right, do I jump, do I duck, do I save this person, do I kill this person? It's a conflict in the mind of the user. They have to make decisions in games. The example I've given here is from poker. Do I hold or do I gamble? There's always a conflict in games, and conflict resolution as well. Games have rules. The main job of a game designer is to write those rules. As I'm going to come up to in further lectures, the best example of that is Dungeons and Dragons. If you ever played the old Dungeons and Dragons, it was simply a rule book. The game itself was, the levels were designed by the games master, played by the players, and the worlds were made in their imagination. The game designer came up with the rules, which is that handbook which the players and the games master use. Games can be won and games can be lost. It could be losing to another player, lose by not achieving the goal you've set. For instance, in the case of the kid playing keepy uppies with his soccer ball, if he doesn't achieve his goal, which is to beat his high score of keepy uppies, he loses if the ball touches the floor. Or as in the image there, it could be the game over screen, the famous game over screen. Exceptions to this rule could include Journey on the PlayStation, where players just play the game for the enjoyment of it. Games are interactive. The player's not passive in a game. There's a big difference between games and a movie or a book. You watch a movie, you do not have any influence on the outcome of the movie. Whereas in a game, your actions have a direct effect on the outcome of the game. Games have challenge. One of the things, a big part of game design is getting that challenge right. Is it too easy? Is it too hard? We'll talk about this more. Getting that balance just right, where the player doesn't find it too easy and give up because there's no challenge, or find it too hard and give up because they get frustrated. Getting in that zone where you're constantly challenging the player is a big challenge of a game designer. They engage players. You might have heard of the phrase immersive experiences. If you look at the image there, have you ever seen anybody on a bus playing Candy Crush, for instance? They're completely involved in the game. Again, this is to do with the flow state, which is through the challenge. People, when they get in that zone, they enjoy that experience. It's the challenge of a game designer to make an engaging experience for them. They can create their own internal values. The money in Monopoly does not have any value at all. Only in the game. In the game, it means more than anything. You know, if you have that money and you're looking at it and you have the 500s and stuff, in the game it has value. An example there is from a game called Entropia Universe. Somebody sold a property in that game for $635,000. It doesn't exist. It's simply a model, a 3D model in the game. And yet it went for a real world value of $635,000. Games need clear objectives. This I tend to think of as the elevator pitch. I'll be talking about this again. It's really a one sentence or two sentence summary of your game. It should be able to be summed up in 2 sentences. For instance, Battleships is a game where you try and sink your opponent's battleship. The Mario games, Save the Princess, chess, defeat the other king or take the other king. You can summarize games. They really should be able to be summarized in 1 or 2 sentences. And the elevator pitch. I got the students here to, when they were designing the games, do a video of themselves doing an elevator pitch, being a pitch that if you were conventional, and you got stuck in an elevator with one of the biggest publishers, and you had the length of that elevator ride to convince them to invest in your game, or the elevator pitch is that 30 seconds to a minute. You'd be able to summarize your game. Okay, I'm just going to go through a few tips to finish this lecture. First one, in most situations, focus on gameplay, not story. Gameplay is the most important thing. That's what engages the player. It goes for aesthetics as well. There's a lot of very pretty games where the gameplay sucks in them and they don't retain the attention of the player no matter how good they look. As with most other endeavours in game design, you won't be good to start with. It takes persistence, persistence, persistence. I was looking at the example of Rovio, who did Angry Birds. That was their 50-second game before they actually had that hit. Keep it simple. Avoid the curse of more. Having a good game design document helps this a lot, but it's very easy to get feature creep where you'll be playtesting it and it'll go, wouldn't it be good if we just had this feature, if we had this feature, we had this feature. At some point you've got to go, this is it, this is the game we're going to make. Games can always be improved, but there comes a point when it isn't worth the time. The same thing. At some point you have to just stop and say, yep, this is the game we're making. Game design is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. It is hard work. Games are not movies, they're interactive, which goes back to the slide on what is the game there. Make sure the player always has something to do. Cutscenes are fine in games, but make sure that the player can skip them and move on, and the player's always interactive. If the player isn't doing something, it's not really a game. Just reiterates the point there. If no one can play your game design, you don't have a game yet. I'll go into this a bit more in the next lecture. Prototype early, prototype often. Iterative design. Get it down in either a game engine or play it with a piece of paper and pencils. Just get a playable version as soon as possible. Player testing is the heart of creation. Your prototype will change a lot. Don't spend time making it pretty or fancy. Yeah, either pen and paper, if it's a board game, or if you're in a game engine, just use shapes, add the mechanics to the shapes, see if the game mechanics, the core game mechanics are working, and then work on the animations and making it look pretty. Listen most to playtesters who lost the game. Why did they lose? Was it because they didn't understand a certain part of your game? What was stopping them from progressing through your game? And finally, just a quote here. Making an 80% game is very easy. A lot of games that are out there are 80% finished. With more testing, the game could be more elegant, and the last 20% takes a lot of time. That's the difficult part. Yeah, be prepared. The last 20% of your game, the polish, making it as good as it can be, takes more time than the other 80%. Okay, that's it for this lecture. Next up, the role of a game designer and the game design workflow.